two identical storefronts. One game costs $2.49, built by one person over 2.5 years, no publisher, no studio, no ad budget. The other cost $50, required hundreds of developers backed by Sony, and arrived with one of the biggest PlayStation marketing campaigns of its year. On Steam, the $2 game has 6 times the reviews. This is the whole story of how that happened and what it teaches about every game that will ever launch with a platform-exclusive deal.
Here are the numbers as of July 2026, pulled directly from the Steam appreviews API. Undertale, 331,716 Steam reviews, overwhelmingly positive. Spider-Man, Miles Morales, 54,034 Steam reviews. Miles Morales sits in positive territory, neither game has a bad score. But the gap is a factor of 6. The indie is 20 times cheaper and has 6 times the community footprint on the platform we are measuring. That ratio is the puzzle this video unpacks.
Before the 5 causal factors, a note on why Steam review count is the metric worth examining here, not Metacritic, not concurrent players, not sales data. Metacritic is a launch window signal, it crystallizes at release and stops moving. Sales figures are private and platform siloed. Concurrent players collapse after any developer slows update cadence. Steam review count is the only public metric that compounds over years without resetting. Every review represents a deliberate human action, a player who stopped, chose to write, and submitted. 6 times the reviews means 6 times as many players entered that loop. That is community engagement at scale.
Here is the full data picture for context. Undertale. Steam launch September 2015, price $2.49, developer tobyfox alone, 331,716 reviews, overwhelmingly positive, 11 years on the platform. Spider-Man, Miles Morales, PlayStation launch November 2020, PC launch November 2022, price $49.99, developer Insomniac Games and publisher Sony Interactive Entertainment. 54,034 reviews, positive. The timeline gap is immediately visible. Undertale has had more than 3 times as long to accumulate reviews. But we will show that even adjusting for time, the annual rate of accumulation still favors the indie. The explanation runs deeper than age.
Undertale, tobyfox built it alone from 2013 to 2015, composing every music track, drawing every sprite, writing every line of dialogue. It shipped on September 15, 2015, originally at $9.99, now permanently $2.49. What makes it mechanically unusual is its 3-route structure, a pacifist path where you resolve every encounter without violence, a neutral path, and a genocide route where you hunt down every enemy and the game actively responds to your choices. That branching design means players do not just finish Undertale, they discuss which path they took. They send friends into the game with specific instructions, they recruit. The game ships with its own word-of-mouth engine built in.
Spider-Man, Miles Morales is, by most technical metrics, a more expensive and polished product. Insomniac Games, hundreds of developers, shipped it first on PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 in November 2020. On PC hardware it runs at 4K 60 frames per second with ray-traced reflections and web-swinging mechanics refined across multiple titles. It sold millions of copies and holds a positive review score. Its structural challenge, from a Steam review accumulation standpoint, is that it was built first and foremost as a PlayStation experience. The PC version arrived as a port in November 2022, 2 years after the cultural moment of its launch had already played out on console.
Factor 1, the exclusivity window permanently caps a game's Steam community. When Miles Morales launched in November 2020, Steam players could not purchase it. The cultural energy of launch, the meme cycles, the social media clips, the you need to play this recommendations, all of that traveled through PlayStation accounts and PlayStation ecosystem word of mouth. By the time the PC version arrived in November 2022, those 2 years of organic marketing had already been spent by a community with no Steam accounts to review on. Undertale had no exclusivity arrangement, it launched on Steam and every player, every recruitment cycle, every first-time review landed directly in the count you see today.
Factor 2. The price gap is not cosmetic, it is a funnel multiplier. $2.49, sits below impulse buy friction for the majority of Steam users. A friend's recommendation, a sale notification, an idle browse, any of these converts to a purchase with almost zero decision cost. $49.99 requires genuine belief in the product before the transaction. When the effective player pool is larger because the price floor is lower, the reviewer pool scales proportionally. Undertale's price did not make it popular on its own. Its price made popularity self-compounding once the initial word of mouth reached critical mass.
Factor 3. The age gap is real but cannot fully explain the numbers. You might argue that 11 years of accumulation simply dwarfs 4 years. Run the math. Undertale has averaged approximately 30,000 new reviews per year across its time on Steam. Miles Morales has averaged roughly 14,000 per year since its PC launch. Even on a per-year basis, the indie is compounding at more than double the rate of the AAA title. The age differential amplifies the final gap. The structural factors we are describing are what drive the per-year rate difference underneath it.
Factor 4. Some games become canonical, others are prestige experiences. Undertale has crossed into a category where it is discussed as a reference point for narrative design, for indie development, for what a solo developer can accomplish. It is cited in game design essays, compared in reviews of other RPGs, recommended to people who say they don't play games as an entry point to caring. That canonical status creates a durable new player pipeline years after release. Players who discovered gaming in 2022 or 2025 still arrive at Undertale eventually. Spider-Man, Miles Morales is genuinely excellent, but it functions as a prestige entertainment experience, polished, engaging, and then complete. The cultural conversation about it does not sustain a multi-year recruitment loop.
Factor 5, and the most structurally distinctive, Undertale has a built-in player recruitment loop. The 3-route design means experienced players actively send new players into the game with specific guidance: do the pacifist run first, trust me, do not look anything up. That instruction giving is a word-of-mouth amplifier. Every person who receives that guidance eventually writes a review, because they had a shaped, deliberate first experience. Spider-Man, Miles Morales has one primary story arc and a post-game completion checklist. It is not a game where experienced players set up a new player's first run and watch the outcome. That referral architecture is a fundamental design difference, and it moves the review count over years in ways that no marketing campaign can replicate.
Now, what do these numbers not tell you, and who should avoid reading the gap as a verdict on game quality? Steam review count measures community engagement reach. It does not measure production value, graphical fidelity, or narrative polish. Miles Morales is a technically superior product by those metrics: ray tracing, high frame rate web swinging, cinematic performances from a large voice and motion capture cast. If those are your priorities, Undertale cannot satisfy them at any price. Do not choose a game based solely on its review count lead. Someone picking up Miles Morales for a big-budget superhero experience that Undertale structurally cannot provide is making a completely rational decision. The data describes accumulation patterns, it does not prescribe purchases. Review count is one signal, not a summary judgment.
Separating structural from accidental, the platform exclusivity window and the price multiplier are structural. Given similar games, similar deals, and similar price points, you would see comparable gaps in favor of the simultaneous launch, lower-cost title. The canonical status is earned over years and is not something a developer can engineer directly. It is an outcome of design resonance with the medium's enthusiast culture. The 3-route recruitment loop is structural. tobyfox designed it as a set of deliberate choices that turn players into recruiters. What is accidental is the specific magnitude. The gap might have been 3-1 or 9-1 depending on how the cultural conversation landed. The structural factors explain why Undertale leads, the accidental ones explain by how much.
The teaching framework this data produces, when evaluating a game's long-term Steam review potential, as a developer, an investor, or a curious observer, apply 4 questions. First, does it launch on Steam simultaneously with other platforms, or does an exclusivity deal delay Steam community formation? Second, is the price at or below impulse buy threshold for the target player base? Third, does the design include a player-to-player recruitment loop, something that makes players send friends into a specific, guided first experience? Fourth, does the game have canonical status potential, or is it a prestige experience you complete and set aside? Undertale scores positive on all four from a Steam review accumulation standpoint. Miles Morales, by the structure of its release and design, scores neutral or negative on all four, and that is the whole story of the gap.
How we got these numbers: Undertale's review count and Miles Morales's were pulled from the Steam appreviews API, the same endpoint the Steam storefront queries for each game's app ID, on July 25, 2026. Prices from the Steam store pages on the same date. Steam review counts update daily and will drift from the figures in this video. What you see here is a verified snapshot, not a permanent record. If you want the current figure, both store pages are linked in the description below. The API endpoint is public and free to query. FindIndieGame.com also tracks these counts and updates automatically, so you can check the live ratio at any time.
6-1 in favor of a $2.49 solo dev RPG against a $49.99 Sony-backed Marvel sequel backed by hundreds of developers. Not a verdict on which game is better, a map of how community formation actually works on Steam. The full, live-updated data for this matchup and hundreds of others is at FindIndieGame.com. If you want to know which indie is out-reviewing which AAA right now, by price tier, by genre, by team size, that is where we track it. Subscribe here for the next deep dive.